Welcome to Literary Journeys with River. Today we dive into House of Earth and Blood, the first book in the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas. A story of grief, sacrifice, and magic set in a city where angels and demons walk among mortals. Remember, this is just a summary, not the full book. If you love epic urban fantasy filled with romance and mystery, subscribe and hit the bell icon so you won't miss our next illustrated summaries. And tell us where you're watching from. Your comments help YouTube recommend our channel. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Bryce Quinlan, half-fae and half-human, works at Griffin Antiquities, a gallery protected by advanced technology and powerful spells. Her best friend, Danica Fender, alpha of the Pack of Devils, arrives covered in dirt after breaking up a fight between a satyr and a night prowler. Danica leaves her sword at the gallery before heading to a crucial meeting with the city leaders. Bryce senses that something is wrong, but Danica avoids her questions. Philip Briggs, a dangerous human rebel, is about to be released on a technicality, worrying Danica since she was the one who captured him before he could detonate a bomb at the White Raven Club. Bryce feels that her friend is tense and suspects that something else is troubling her, but Danica doesn't reveal any details. The shadow of Briggs' release threatens the city's peace. Chapter 2. Bryce and Danica walk through Old Square, where tourists and locals gather around the Heart Gate, an ancient communication monument. Both make a wish on the gate's golden disc, a gesture they use to share after nights of partying. Danica wishes for her brother Ethan to win his softball game that night, while Bryce jokes about Danica needing a manicure. Despite the laughter, Danica's concern over Philip Briggs' release lingers in the air. Bryce tries to cheer her up, but Danica remains uneasy. They discuss the theft of Luna's horn, a sacred relic that disappeared during the city's blackout. Bryce suspects that the blackout was deliberately caused to hide the theft, but she has no proof yet. They part ways, with Danica heading to the Comitium for a tense meeting and Bryce to the Luna Temple. Chapter 3. Bryce returns to her apartment, where the Pack of Devils is already settled in, enjoying pizza and beer after Ethan's softball game. Connor, the second in command, tries to convince Bryce to go out with him, but she rejects the idea of being with another alpha wolf. Danica is restless after her meeting with the city leaders, where Sabine publicly humiliated her, blaming her for the death of 2 human students during the blackout. Bryce tries to comfort her, but Danica remains worried. While Bryce gets ready for a date with Reed, a boring and predictable human, Danica teases her with sarcastic comments. Bryce leaves, but she can't shake off her concern for Danica. Despite the jokes and relaxed atmosphere, the tension over Briggs' release and the recent murders darkens the mood. Chapter 4. Bryce attends an elegant dinner at Pearl and Rose with Reed, a wealthy and superficial human. As she waits impatiently, Bryce receives messages from Connor, who confesses his feelings and asks for a chance to date her. When Reed arrives late and acts distracted, Bryce loses her patience. After a tense conversation about the Pangera War and the Angels' indifference toward the conflict, Bryce ends things with Reed. Furious, she grabs her wine and leaves, but not before confronting an arrogant noble fae who insults her. Bryce responds with sarcasm and makes it clear she won't tolerate disrespect. She then calls Fury and Juniper to go to the White Raven, Crescent City's most famous club, determined to forget the bad night. Chapter 5. Bryce arrives at the White Raven, where she surrenders to the ecstasy of music, drugs, and dancing. Accompanied by Fury and Juniper, she enjoys a wild night. Fury, always mysterious and dangerous, warns her about a new drug called synth, which can be lethal. Bryce chooses not to try it but indulges in buscalas and risorozoma. Dancing non-stop, she loses track of time and feels free, leaving her worries behind. The euphoria of the moment makes her consider staying in that chaotic world forever. However, when she leaves the club, her confused mind barely allows her to get home. Upon arriving at her building, she senses something is out of place, and despite being high, she feels that tragedy awaits her behind the door. Chapter 6. Bryce returns to her apartment and finds the door shattered. The smell of blood and death overwhelms her. Upon entering, she discovers the dismembered bodies of Danica and the Pack of Devils. Horror paralyzes her, but when she hears a noise in the hallway, she chases after the creature responsible. Following its trail, she reaches an alley where she finds a wounded angel and an unknown demon devouring him. Driven by pain and rage, Bryce attacks the monster but only manages to injure it before it escapes. Trying to save the angel, she calls for help and manages to give her location before passing out. Hours later, she wakes up at the 33rd Legion, surrounded by officers, where she realizes that her life has just changed forever. Chapter 7. Bryce kneels before the ivory gates in the Bone Quarter, bidding farewell to Danica before the crossing. The Istros reflects the mist as Bryce, lost in her grief, remembers Ithan's words forbidding her from attending. Ignoring the messages and calls, Bryce spends 6 days locked away, but finally emerges on the 7th dawn. In that place of mist and silence, she faces the realm of the dead, where an ancient creature emerges from the fog. Resigned, Bryce offers her final goodbye, feeling that a part of her soul has died as well. The black boat remains the only witness to her pain. The coldness of the atmosphere, the weight of death, and the loneliness envelop her as Bryce lifts her gaze toward the gates, ready to let Danica go to the other side of the river, where her soul will be judged. Chapter 8. 2 years later, Bryce is at the White Raven, distracted by a lion shifter. Despite the attraction, she leaves him to attend a business meeting in the VIP bar. Her client, Maximus Tertian, a high-ranking vampire, flatters her, but Bryce manipulates him into buying an onyx bust. While exchanging documents, Maximus hints at personal intentions, which Bryce rejects. As she leaves, Maximus mistakes her for a prostitute, prompting Bryce's laughter. When Maximus insists, the situation turns uncomfortable, but Rune Danon, her brother, appears to protect her. Although she pretends he's her cousin, Rune's presence drives Maximus away. Bryce and Rune argue, highlighting the tension in their relationship. In the end, Bryce leaves alone, avoiding Rune's company, though his watchful presence lingers nearby. Chapter 9. Hunt Athalar, the Umbra Mortis, murders a group of shifters under Mycadamatus orders. Blood and terror fill the room as Hunt methodically eliminates his targets, showcasing his brutal efficiency. Back at the Comitium, he slips in silently to avoid attention from his companions. Naomi, Victoria, and Justinian, members of the Triarii, greet him, but Hunt avoids conversation. Isaiah informs him that they will investigate a murder in Old Square the next day. Tired and haunted by his past, Hunt showers to wash the blood off his body, but he cannot cleanse the guilt he feels. His thoughts return to his time under Sandriel's rule and the crimes he committed to survive. With each execution, Hunt gets closer to repaying his debt, but freedom remains a distant dream. Chapter 10. Bryce attends to a pair of Fae clients at the Griffin Gallery when Isaiah and Hunt arrive to question her. She tries to ignore them, but they insist on talking about Maximus Tertian's death. Bryce, distrustful, feigns indifference, but her facade crumbles upon learning that Tertian's wounds are identical to those of Danica and the Pack of Devils. Governor Micah is on his way to interrogate her, and Bryce immediately calls Jezebel Roga. The tension rises as Jezebel orders her to ensure everything is protected. Bryce remains calm, but fear consumes her as she realizes they may be wrong about Philip Briggs and that the real killer is still out there. After ending the call, Bryce braces herself for what's coming, aware that her world is about to collapse once again. Chapter 11. Bryce opened the door to Archangel Mycadamatus, accompanied by Hunt Athalar and Isaiah Tiberian. Micah radiated power, filling the air with a mixture of storms, desire, and death. Bryce maintained her composure, but the scar on her thigh reminded her of old wounds. Micah, impassive, confirmed that Jezebel Roga would join the meeting virtually. Hunt watched her intently, his presence as unsettling as the Archangel's. Bryce hid her discomfort and activated the screen for Jezebel to appear from her luxurious suite. The sorceress, always cold and calculating, greeted Micah with indifference. The conversation quickly shifted to the recent murder, similar to that of Danica and her pack. Micah revealed a disturbing truth. He wanted Bryce to find the killer, believing that her connection to Danica and Tertian could be the key. Bryce accepted the challenge, determined to uncover the truth and seek justice. Chapter 12. After the meeting, Micah took Hunt and Isaiah to the rooftop to discuss the situation. With the summit approaching, Micah feared the murders would stain his reputation, so he offered Hunt a tempting deal. If he solved the case before the summit, his debt would be reduced to only 10 more missions. This offer surprised Hunt, who, although wary of the Archangel's intentions, saw an opportunity to get closer to his freedom. Isaiah warned that this also kept Hunt away from the Comitium while Sandriel, the cruel Archangel and his former master, visited the city. Hunt accepted, aware of the danger that Sandriel and Pollux, her ruthless commander, represented. Micah ordered Hunt to watch over Bryce, a task that would keep him close to her and away from the horrors of the Comitium. Though uneasy, Hunt realized this was his only chance to change his fate. Chapter 13. Bryce, alone in the gallery, reflected on Micah's offer and the implications of investigating Danica's death. Jezebel, always cunning, reminded her that her work at the gallery could not be neglected, warning that if she lost money, she would turn her into a tortoise. Determined, Bryce began compiling a list of suspects and places Danica had visited before her murder. The pain in her leg tormented her, but her determination pushed her forward. Despite her fear, she vowed to find the killer and avenge her friend. She remembered Connor's messages and the void his loss left in her soul. Bryce knew that this investigation could cost her life, but she was willing to risk everything. The weight of the promise she made to Micah burned in her chest, and she was ready to confront the shadows of the past. Chapter 14. Rune Danan visited his father, the Autumn King, in his study. The heavy atmosphere of the place reflected the king's cold nature. Rune reported on Isaiah Tiberian's visit and the recent murders, but his father, indifferent, dismissed the concern. During the meeting, the Autumn King ordered Rune to find Luna's horn, a sacred artifact stolen 2 years ago. He also suggested that Rune consider a political marriage with Hypaxia, the new Witch Queen, to strengthen alliances in preparation for the impending war. Resentful of his father's manipulation, Rune felt the weight of his lineage. Though he obeyed, he remembered the oracle's prophecy predicting the end of the royal bloodline with him. As he left the study, his mind wrestled between duty and his desire to forge his own path, away from the king's shadow. Chapter 15. Bryce tried to relax by watching her favorite reality show when Syrinx began growling and scratching at the window. Curious about the commotion, Bryce discovered Hunt Athalar watching her from the rooftop across the street. Annoyed, she closed the curtains, but shortly after, Hunt called her, asking her to open them again, claiming he needed to watch over her. Bryce and Hunt exchanged sarcastic remarks as he insisted on his role as her protector, assigned by Micah. Although Bryce acknowledged the need for protection, she resisted having her privacy invaded. Hunt revealed that he had reviewed her file, prompting Bryce to tease him by asking if he had visited Rune. After several jokes and challenges, both admitted that working together would be difficult. Bryce stood firm in maintaining her space and privacy, while Hunt made it clear that he would not disobey his orders. Chapter 16. Hunt, frustrated with having to watch over Bryce, endured the weather while observing her from the street. He called Isaiah to complain about his situation and commented on Syrinx's abilities, who surprised him by appearing next to him without warning. Hunt confessed that Bryce wasn't taking the investigation seriously and that her attitude irritated him. Meanwhile, Bryce ignored Hunt and visited a nail salon to discreetly speak with Maximus Tertian's girlfriend, seeking key information. After a long wait, Hunt lost his patience and went to confront her. But Bryce revealed that she had obtained valuable information from Tertian's girlfriend, who mentioned that his connection to Danica was through the Viper Queen. Despite his irritation, Hunt began to realize that Bryce was making progress faster than he had expected. Chapter 17. Bryce visited Rune to ask for information about the Viper Queen, suspecting she might be involved in the murders. Although her relationship with Rune was tense, Bryce made it clear that she was willing to risk everything to find Danica's killer. Rune, under the effects of risserizoma, struggled to stay focused as Bryce questioned whether the AUX had information about the Viper Queen's movements. Concerned for his sister's safety, Rune warned her that staying away from those circles was best. However, Bryce ignored his warnings and made it clear she would continue. As she left Rune's house, she encountered Hunt again, who was still watching her, which sparked tension between Rune and the angel. They exchanged hostile words, but Hunt had no intention of leaving Bryce alone. Chapter 18. Bryce tricked Hunt to slip away and head to the meat market, a dangerous place full of illegal dealings. Hunt followed her, furious, and confronted her upon arrival. Bryce was looking to buy obsidian salt, used to summon demons, and threatened the nervous satyr vendor to get it at a reduced price. Hunt, surprised by Bryce's negotiation skills and concerned about the danger the salt posed, followed her as she got what she needed. Upon leaving, they came face to face with the Viper Queen, a feared and powerful figure who ruled the meat market. The tension escalated as they stood before this dangerous serpentine shifter, whose interest in Bryce and Hunt promised to further complicate the investigation. Chapter 19. Bryce and Hunt meet with the Viper Queen, ruler of the meat market. Bryce uses the obsidian salt as a pretext to capture her attention and avoid waiting weeks for information. The Viper Queen leads them to her office, which turns out to be a deteriorated and chaotic space, far from the expected luxury. During their encounter, the Viper Queen confirms that Danica was a threat to her, although their relationship was strictly business. She also denies any connection to the death of Maximus Tertian, who was killed near her territory. After handing them a drive with her alibis, she warns Bryce about the dangers of obsidian salt. Despite the tension, Bryce and Hunt manage to leave the meat market alive. On the way back, Bryce reflects on the Viper Queen's warning and decides to follow her advice, to look where it hurts most to find answers. Chapter 20. The next day, Bryce tries to concentrate on her work at the gallery, but memories of Danica haunt her. She decides to review old emails with Maximus Tertian, searching for clues but finds nothing relevant. Lahaba, the fire sprite, suggests asking Hunt for help, and he agrees. Together, they descend to the library, a place filled with contraband objects and ancient books protected by Lahaba. Bryce asks Hunt to help her recall details from Danica's last week. Slowly, they compile a list of her movements, including visits to the gallery, the beauty salon, and the softball arena. As they work, Hunt discovers that Bryce bought Syrinx's freedom, the chimera, sacrificing part of her salary. Amid confessions and moments of vulnerability, Bryce reveals the depth of her pain and her fear of reopening old wounds. Chapter 21. Rune summons Bryce and Hunt to the Luna Temple, one of the few places in the city without cameras. There, Rune reveals that the Autumn King ordered him to search for Luna's horn, an artifact lost during the blackout 2 years ago. The horn was created to seal rifts between the world and hell but lost its power when it was broken. Rune shows ancient illustrations depicting the horn and a demon called Crystallos, a creature created by the astrophage to hunt it. Bryce recognizes the Crystallos as the demon that attacked Danica. They suspect that the horn is still in the city and that someone is using the Crystallos to track it. Rune confesses that his starborn lineage might help locate the horn, leading Bryce to suggest that following the demon could reveal both the horn's location and the person responsible for the murders. Chapter 22. After the revelation about Luna's horn, Bryce returns to the gallery to continue her investigation. While attending to an unpleasant client, her thoughts remain entangled with the Viper Queen's clue, to look where it hurts most. Bryce finishes the list of Danica's movements, but her mind is restless. Hunt, after making calls to inform Micah and Isaiah about the horn, reflects on the possibility that the artifact could be the key to solving the murders. Justinian warns Hunt that it might be time to let go of his devotion to Shahar, but he ignores the advice. At night, Bryce feels overwhelmed by the accumulated information and collapses into her bed. The search for the horn and Danica's killer continues, and the weight of the truth still lurks in every corner of Lunathion. Chapter 23. Bryce was in the gallery reviewing the list of the last places Danica had visited when Jezebel called her to request that she go up to her office and send a file from her computer. Bryce climbed the stairs, enduring the pain in her leg, and entered Jezebel's luxurious office, where an unarmed pistol hung as decoration behind the desk. While sending the file, Bryce took the opportunity to ask if Jezebel had heard anything about Luna's horn, but Jezebel denied having any information. Back at her desk, Lahaba asked if she could see Athi, but Bryce kept her away. As Bryce reviewed Danika's list again, Hunt called to inform her of another murder, this time near the gate in Old Square. Bryce tried to avoid it, but Hunt arrived at the gallery and forced her to accompany him to the crime scene. Chapter 24. Bryce and Hunt arrived at the crime scene where the magic barriers blocked the alley. Blood covered the bricks, and the dismembered remains of an acolyte from the Luna Temple lay scattered. Bryce began to dissociate, recalling the horrific images of Danica and the pack of devils massacred. Rune arrived to try to get her out of there, but Bryce pulled away, unable to endure anymore. Hunt tried to console her, but Bryce grew furious when he implied that she was still on his suspect list. Enraged, Bryce shouted at him to stay away. The tension escalated between them until Bryce began running aimlessly, trying to release the anguish consuming her. Finally, she arrived at the White Raven and, as the rain fell, she reviewed Danika's old messages, remembering her last, "I love you," while guilt and pain consumed her once again. Chapter 25. Bryce arrived at the White Raven where she met Juniper, her ballet friend, who invited her to dinner. Hunt followed her and joined them, though Bryce was furious and annoyed by the angel's intervention. Juniper tried to mediate, but the tension escalated when Hunt ordered food for Bryce, provoking an argument. As they talked, Rune appeared at the club to keep an eye on her. Bryce was about to confront him when, suddenly, a bomb exploded in the club, destroying everything around them. Bryce protected Juniper, covering her with her body as debris fell. Hunt and Rune helped Bryce out of the destroyed venue, but she was in shock. Juniper, worried, reminded her that she had not yet made the drop, increasing everyone's concern. Hunt took Bryce to Rune's house so she could recover after the attack. Chapter 26. Hunt took Bryce to Rune's house after the attack and tended to her wounds. While cleaning the blood and debris from her skin, they discussed the possible culprits behind the bombing, considering the possibility that Philip Briggs' followers were responsible. Rune arrived with alarming news. The bomb contained a logo that could be interpreted as a deformed C or a horn, indicating a warning related to the search for Luna's horn. Additionally, the Autumn King ordered that Bryce have a guardian living with her for protection. Rune volunteered, but Bryce, furious, chose Hunt for the role. Rune warned of the dangers, but Bryce was determined to keep searching for the horn. Before leaving, she made it clear to Rune to send her regards to his father, and that he could go to hell. Chapter 27. Hunt and Bryce returned to her apartment after the White Raven explosion. Bryce, barefoot and in shock, barely reacts while Hunt watches her with concern. Marin, the doorman, lets them in, and she collapses emotionally as she remembers that she had planned to make the drop with Danica. Inside the apartment, Hunt notices the luxury and details reflecting shared memories between Bryce and Danica. After releasing Syrinx, the Chimera, Bryce speaks about the pain she has felt since the death of her friends. Hunt, feeling empathy, shares his own suffering after the Angel Rebellion and the burden of his deal with Micah, killing to earn his freedom. The conversation turns more intimate when Bryce reveals her past connection with Connor and her complex grief. Both recognize the weight of their pasts and decide to find the one responsible for the tragedy, knowing that their mission has now become personal. Chapter 28. Bryce allows Hunt to stay at her apartment while they investigate. He quickly adapts to the environment, analyzing photos of Bryce's family and discovering that Randall Salago, a war hero, is her adoptive father. Hunt perceives the strength Bryce inherited from him and Ember. That night, they share a quiet dinner before Bryce retreats to rest. The next day, Hunt wakes up with Syrinx on top of him and finds Juniper arriving with croissants for Bryce. Bryce's friend teases Hunt and makes it clear that she is watching their relationship with interest. Bryce and Hunt discuss the need for him to have full access to the apartment to ensure her safety. She reluctantly agrees, establishing a dynamic of mutual cooperation as they continue their mission to uncover the truth. Chapter 29. Hunt accompanies Bryce to Griffin Antiquities, where Rune joins the investigation. In the library, they search for information about the Crystallos and analyze the possible link between Danika's death and the stolen horn. Bryce suggests looking for clues in ancient art, while Rune uses his starborn power to locate possible hints in the books. They find references about the horn and discover that only a starborn fae can activate it. Rune realizes that his lineage is key to the mystery. Danika's location data reveals that she was at the Luna Temple before the horn was stolen, suggesting that she might have witnessed something important. Hunt and Bryce begin to suspect that there are two people involved: the killer and the one who stole the horn, complicating the case even further. Chapter 30. Bryce and Hunt head to the Comitium for Hunt to pick up his clothes. During the ride, they joke about Bryce's effect on the Legionnaires. In the barracks, Hunt shares details about his past and the burden of the Angel Rebellion. Bryce gains a deeper understanding of his pain and sacrifice. Hunt receives news from Isaiah. His request to meet with Briggs has been approved, and the Oracle will receive them the next day. Back at the Comitium, a powerful presence stops everyone in their tracks. Across the lobby, the crowd kneels before an Archangel who arrives accompanied by Micah. Bryce and Hunt realize that the Archangel's arrival will change the course of their mission. Chapter 31. Sandriel appeared unexpectedly, paralyzing Hunt and prompting Isaiah to order everyone to kneel. Bryce, sensing Hunt's tension, took control of the situation by pretending to be a superficial young woman, taking photos of the Archangels to break the tension. Her bold maneuver confused the crowd and Micah, who followed them to the elevator. When Micah invited Bryce to dinner, she firmly rejected him before the elevator doors closed. Hunt was shaken by Sandriel's presence, remembering the horrors of his past. Bryce quickly got him out of there, maintaining a relaxed facade to avoid trouble. However, both knew that Sandriel would not forget that encounter and that there were many unanswered questions. As they flew away from the scene, Bryce and Hunt shared a moment of trust and mutual gratitude, though the tension lingered. Chapter 32. Bryce and Hunt returned to the apartment after the tense encounter with Sandriel. Hunt, still shaken, remembered the similarities between Sandriel and Shahar, reliving his traumas. Bryce tried to reassure him and showed a strength that impressed Hunt, especially when she rejected Micah's offer without hesitation. Later, Bryce revealed her traumatic experience with the Oracle when she was a child, when the Sphinx screamed and went blind upon seeing her fate. Hunt, shocked, realized that Bryce was hiding dangerous secrets. The next day, Hunt visited the Oracle to ask about Luna's horn and discovered that it could be used to open doors between worlds, but how to repair it remained unclear. The Sphinx also warned Hunt to stay away from Bryce, which raised even more questions. As he left, Hunt concealed his unease, but he knew that the threat surrounding Bryce was greater than they had imagined. Chapter 33. Hunt informed Bryce and Rune about what the Oracle had revealed regarding Luna's horn, its ability to open portals and the possibility of repairing it. The threat that the horn could be used to open the Northern Rift posed catastrophic consequences. Rune suggested seeking answers from the Medwitches, while Bryce theorized that the rebels or even Ophion might want to use the horn to overthrow the Astery. The connection between Danika and the horn's theft became more evident, but unanswered questions continued to grow. Hunt and Bryce reviewed all the data on Danika's movements before her death, discovering that she had been watching the Luna Temple the night of the theft, something unusual for her. This clue raised new doubts about her role in the mystery. The sense that something big and dangerous was approaching was undeniable for both of them. Chapter 34. Bryce and Hunt interrogated Philip Briggs in a subterranean cell at the Comitium. The prisoner, a shell of the man he once was, denied any involvement in the White Raven bombing and claimed that his followers had abandoned him. Briggs surprised Bryce by revealing that Danika had sympathized, at least partially, with his cause and had even allowed some of them to escape on occasion. Bryce remained composed and did not let Briggs' comments affect her too much, but the revelation left unsettling questions. Hunt noticed the coldness in Bryce's voice and saw the determination in her eyes. As they left the cell, Hunt had to endure Briggs' comments about his past as a rebel, words that echoed in his mind and reignited his guilt. Bryce, on the other hand, was processing the possibility that Danica might have been more involved than she had believed. Chapter 35. Bryce and Hunt returned to the apartment after the interrogation with Briggs. Hunt, tormented by his past and the comparison to Briggs, opened up to Bryce about the horrors he endured after the fall of Shahar's rebellion, spending 7 years in torture before becoming the Archangel's weapon. Bryce, far from judging him, assured him that he was nothing like Briggs, which deeply moved Hunt. As the tension between them grew, they shared moments of closeness and trust. Bryce and Hunt resumed their investigation and realized that the Luna Temple had exterior cameras that might have captured something on the night of the horn's theft. Hunt suggested sending the footage to an expert for analysis, sparking new hope of finding answers. Despite everything, both knew that danger still lurked and that the pieces of the puzzle were far from fitting together. Chapter 36. Hunt and Bryce arrive at the shooting range in Moonwood, where they find Rune, Flynn, and Declan practicing. The gallery is spacious, modern, and soundproofed. Flynn takes a shot and barely misses, prompting Declan's teasing. Bryce and Hunt bet on what kind of business the place could be. Bryce analyzes the weapons and asks Declan for help reviewing the footage from the night of the horn's theft. Declan agrees, though he doubts they'll find anything new. Tension rises when Flynn challenges Bryce to shoot. She accepts and surprises everyone with her impeccable aim, hitting the same spot 3 times. Hunt feels pride and attraction for Bryce, who returns his gaze with a challenging look. The moment is interrupted when Hunt receives an urgent call. Another murder has occurred in Asphodel Meadows, and they must head there immediately. Chapter 37. Hunt and Bryce arrive at the alley where the murder occurred, accompanied by Rune and his friends. The scene is grim, filled with trash and surrounded by dilapidated buildings. The body is that of one of the Luna Temple guards, killed 30 minutes earlier. Isaiah confirms that the guard was on duty the night of the horn's theft, suggesting that someone is eliminating witnesses. Bryce, observing a map, notices a pattern. All the murders occurred near major avenues that align with ley lines, indicating that the energy could be used to summon the demon. Hunt asks Isaiah to have Victoria review the cameras in those areas. As Bryce processes the information, Hunt supports her silently. Tension grows when Declan warns Bryce to be careful with Hunt, reminding her that angels have their own interests. Chapter 38. While returning from the murder scene, Bryce and Hunt encounter Sabine, who confronts Bryce with hatred, asking about Danica's sword. Hunt protects Bryce, but she, trembling, asks to leave. Sabine insults Bryce, provoking Hunt's anger, who struggles to restrain himself. Back at home, Hunt promises Bryce that they will find the culprit. Later, Declan calls Bryce with a revelation. The temple's recordings were altered during the horn's theft, and the person in charge of that part of the investigation was Sabine Fender. The information shakes Bryce, who now seriously considers that Sabine might be involved. Hunt and Bryce analyze the possibility that Sabine killed Danica to prevent her from talking. Although they have suspicions, they still lack solid evidence to accuse her. Chapter 39. Disturbed by the information about Sabine, Bryce goes for a run in the middle of the night to clear her mind. Hunt accompanies her, although she insists on running alone. The tension and pain in her leg increase as Sabine occupies her thoughts. Upon returning, Bryce can barely walk but pretends to be fine. Hunt notices her limp and worries about her unhealed wound, suspecting that she never received proper medical attention. Bryce tries to downplay it, but Hunt remains unconvinced. Later, Rune visits a med witch to investigate possible ways to repair Luna's horn. She suggests that modern medical advances could be the key to restoring a broken magical object. Rune is intrigued by the possibility, though the med witch warns him to proceed with caution. Chapter 40. Victoria finds a lead, a temperature fluctuation and a blurry image of the Crystallos near Moonwood. Bryce and Hunt go to the lab to analyze the evidence. The creature had been prowling around the den, the heart of Sabine's territory, reinforcing suspicions of her involvement. Bryce notices that the demon seems to be searching for something, or someone. Victoria also finds similar fluctuations on the night of Maximus Tertian's murder, confirming that the Crystallos was present. Bryce, affected by memories of her attack, struggles to stay calm. Hunt, noticing her discomfort, offers physical and emotional support. Although the demon disappeared without a trace, Bryce and Hunt are determined to follow its trail to uncover who controls it and how it is connected to Luna's horn. Chapter 41. The rain was relentless, and Hunt wasn't sure whether it was a blessing that kept the streets empty or a curse that washed away any trace of the demon. Bryce, struggling with Syrinx to get out, ended up thanking Hunt's intervention as he used his power to lift the animal off the rug. Bryce and Hunt headed to the Rose Gate, searching for clues. The gate, covered in flowers, was silent under the rain, but there were no traces of the demon. Hunt noticed Bryce's pain in her thigh but chose not to comment. Bryce pointed out a camera that had captured a stain on Vic's footage. While studying the area, Hunt had a revelation. The demon was using the sewer system to move unseen. Bryce groaned when she saw the manhole cover, knowing they would have to go down there to continue their investigation. Chapter 42. Bryce and Hunt opened the manhole and were met with the stench of the drainage. Hunt illuminated the dark tunnel, seeing claw marks everywhere. Bryce, disgusted, suggested looking for traces, but Hunt knew it wouldn't be that easy. Bryce insisted on going down, but Hunt refused without more weapons, fearing Sabine and the demon. Bryce, unafraid, challenged him, but Hunt explained that water and his lightning would be a dangerous combination. Considering other options, Hunt suggested talking to the River Queen's people to see if they had noticed anything unusual in the river. They decided to wait until dawn to avoid nocturnal predators. Back home, Bryce took a shower, feeling disgusted by the filth of the sewer, while Hunt found a box of unicorns from her childhood. Bryce, embarrassed, explained their sentimental value, revealing that those toys had been her refuge and first connection with other children. Hunt, amused, promised never to mock them again. Chapter 43. The next morning, Bryce and Hunt went to the Istros River, where the waters reflected centuries of waste and secrets. As they approached, Therian Ketos, a muscular mare with reddish scales and a friend of Hunt, emerged to greet them. Bryce, intrigued, joked with Therian, who openly flirted with her. Hunt, annoyed, got straight to the point and explained the threat of the Crystallos. Therian, shocked, promised to ask the River Queen and keep a close watch for any strange activity. While Bryce and Hunt observed the river and the black dock where mourners bade farewell to their dead, the tension between them was palpable. Bryce felt comfortable beside Hunt, who shared the story of how they had worked together on a previous murder case in the Mare community. Growing closer, Bryce and Hunt couldn't help but feel drawn to each other, but both were aware of the dangers of crossing that line. Chapter 44. Bryce and Hunt arrived at the Wolf's Den to speak with Sabine. The villa was beautiful, but Bryce felt the weight of memories of Danica. Amelie Ravenscroft, now alpha of the Black Rose Pack, received them with hostility, humiliating Bryce and provoking Hunt. Bryce kept her cool, but the mention of Danica ignited her anger. Ethan Holstrom, Connor's brother, appeared to escort them. His coldness toward Bryce was evident, reminding her of her pain and guilt. Before Sabine, Bryce and Hunt tried to extract information about Danica and the stolen horn, but Sabine denied everything and showed her disdain for Bryce. As they left, Ethan warned them that Sabine wanted Bryce dead. The tension grew when Bryce confronted Ethan, who blamed her for Connor's death. Upon returning home, Bryce reflected on the hatred she still faced for that fateful night and how people had never stopped judging her. Chapter 45. Bryce returned to her apartment after an exhausting day and spoke with Juniper on the phone, who suggested she attend a dance class to distract herself, reminding her how talented she had been before Danica's death. Bryce hesitated, feeling incapable of dancing again. As they talked, she watched Hunt from her window, who was keeping watch before flying off to a bar with his Triarii companions. Juniper declined her invitation to watch TV, leaving Bryce alone and feeling a void that led her to seek distractions by watching mindless shows. Loneliness weighed heavily on her as she remembered better times, feeling that her social circle had dwindled to almost nothing. With the silence pressing down on her, Bryce decided to go for a walk despite having promised Hunt not to leave the apartment. Her need to escape the emptiness pushed her to break her promise, ignoring the dangers lurking in the shadows. Chapter 46. Hunt, at the bar, receives a call from Naomi informing him that Bryce left the apartment. Without hesitation, he leaves the bar and flies toward 5 Roses, where Naomi follows closely. Bryce walks through night gardens, surrounded by bioluminescent flora, when Hunt lands beside her, questioning her for breaking her promise. Bryce admits that the silence in her apartment was overwhelming, and she needed fresh air. They walk together as the atmosphere between them grows more intimate, but before they can deepen their feelings, a Crystallos demon emerges from the shadows and violently attacks Hunt. Bryce watches in horror as the demon bites the angel's arm, nullifying his power. The situation escalates into a desperate fight where Bryce grabs Hunt's gun and, although she misses her shots, manages to save him. Hunt finally decapitates the demon but is left gravely injured as reinforcements arrive to secure the area. Chapter 47. The Crystallos bites Hunt, nullifying his power and leaving him vulnerable. Bryce, driven by adrenaline, tries to protect him by shooting the demon but misses. Hunt manages to kill the creature by stabbing his knife into its skull and severing its head to ensure it's dead. The arrival of Malik Naomi and a med witch stabilizes Hunt, extracting the venom with Mithridate leeches. Bryce, still dazed, watches as Hunt is treated. Micah arrives at the scene, showing concern for the city's safety before reducing the demon's body to ashes to prevent the press from finding out. Bryce and Hunt realize that the threat is far greater than they imagined and that the stolen horn remains a latent danger. Micah demands more evidence before taking action, making it clear that the city cannot afford more risks before the summit. Chapter 48. Rune arrives at the attack site shortly after Bryce and Hunt leave. A medwitch warns of the dangers of the demon's blood and mentions that the Crystallos was bred for a specific purpose. Rune notices the medwitch's presence, who mentions having relevant information that she will share after returning from a trip. Later, Bryce and Hunt arrive soaked at the apartment, where they finally share a moment of closeness and desire. However, the tension is interrupted when Sabine bursts in armed, pointing at Bryce. Hunt quickly assesses the situation, considering all options to protect her. Sabine accuses Bryce of obstructing the investigation and reveals that Danica stole the horn, forcing her to alter the recordings to protect her legacy. Sabine denies killing her daughter but warns that if they continue digging into the past, she won't hesitate to eliminate them. Chapter 49. Bryce confronts Sabine, who reveals that Danica stole the horn from the temple, forcing her to conceal the evidence to protect her. Sabine denies killing her daughter but makes it clear that Danica was impulsive, and her inability to keep secrets may have doomed her. Bryce and Hunt accuse Sabine of manipulating the situation and sending the Crystallos to attack them, but Sabine, with disturbing coldness, assures them she has nothing to do with the demon. She hints that Amelie Ravenscroft is ready to intervene if things go wrong and directly threatens Bryce and Hunt, warning them that if they continue to endanger Danica's legacy, she will kill them. After issuing her threat, Sabine leaps off the rooftop and disappears, leaving Bryce and Hunt with more questions than answers and the certainty that danger still lurks in the shadows. Chapter 50. Hunt noticed the impact of Sabine's revelation on Bryce, who spent the following days immersed in silence and routine. She barely ate and avoided any deep conversation, including what had happened on the rooftop. Hunt tried to give her space, but his concern consumed him. Meanwhile, the investigation remained stalled, with no progress on the horn or the Crystallos demon. For days, Hunt watched over Bryce in silence, observing how she tried to stay afloat while her mind seemed elsewhere. Finally, Bryce broke the pattern when she received a visit from Rune, who arrived with news about a synthetic drug capable of rapid healing. Bryce showed interest upon hearing that this drug could be the key to repairing the horn, but the conversation revealed more uncertainties than answers. The spark in Bryce's eyes as she discussed new theories was a sign to Hunt that perhaps she was ready to resume the fight. Chapter 51. Rune shared with Bryce and Hunt the possibility that a synthetic healing drug could repair the horn. Bryce revealed that Danica had stolen the horn, a revelation that shocked Rune. The pieces slowly began to fall into place, but the question remained as to why Danica would take such a risk. Bryce was convinced that her friend wasn't trying to use the horn for herself but was protecting it from falling into the wrong hands. Rune also mentioned the existence of a lost dagger, part of a pair alongside the Star's Word, whose return could unite their people. Amid jokes and tensions, Hunt couldn't help but feel increasingly drawn to Bryce, while Rune observed the growing closeness between them. Although Bryce was still processing Danica's loss and the recent revelations, she began to glimpse a new purpose: to find the horn before it fell into the wrong hands. Chapter 52. A message from Therion arrived via an otter messenger, informing them of a body found in a Sobuk's lair. The wounds on the corpse matched those inflicted by the Crystallos, but Bryce noticed a key difference. The magic nullifying venom was present, but the injuries didn't match those on Danica and the pack. This led Bryce to a chilling conclusion: the Crystallos did not kill Danica. Hunt and Bryce deduced that another demon might be involved and decided to seek answers directly from the source. Bryce proposed a dangerous idea: summoning a demon to gather information. Despite Hunt's warnings about the risk, Bryce was determined to uncover the truth. Hunt reluctantly agreed, knowing that this might be their only way forward. Both knew they were about to cross a dangerous line. Chapter 53. Bryce summoned Idas, the Prince of the Chasm, to obtain answers about the demon that killed Danica. Idas, who had appeared in her childhood as a white cat, accepted the summoning and surprised Hunt with his charming appearance and an air of contained danger. Idas denied sending the Crystallos and suggested that something worse might have crossed the rift. With cryptic words, he urged Bryce to make the drop and find him afterward. The connection was severed, leaving Bryce and Hunt with more questions than answers. Bryce revealed her first encounter with Idas when she was 13, after her traumatic visit to the Oracle. That night, Hunt felt a deep fear for what Bryce had unleashed. However, he also saw an unstoppable strength in her, willing to risk everything to uncover the truth. The next day, they decided to reanalyze the evidence with Mimir technology to find clues that might have been missed 2 years ago. Chapter 54. Hunt entered the Comitium, avoiding being seen by Sandriel. Micah awaited him, his power filling the room. When questioned about the Fae traces found in the evidence, Hunt explained that they were trying to identify Danica's true killer. Micah, cold and threatening, reminded him of the approaching summit and warned him about Sandriel, who had offered trades to reclaim him. He handed Hunt a file with his next mission: to assassinate drug traffickers as punishment for his past failures. Loaded with weapons and shutting off his emotions, Hunt left without looking back. Meanwhile, Bryce felt uneasy about Hunt's silence. Her messages received no sincere responses, and after hours of anguish, she called Rune, worried. When Hunt finally appeared, covered in blood and without a word, Bryce felt a momentary relief that quickly turned to concern for the man who entered her room as a shadow of himself. Chapter 55. Hunt returned to the apartment consumed by a storm of guilt and violence. The weight of the lives he had taken under Micah's orders had plunged him into silent pain. Bryce saw the blood covering his suit and helmet, and although he said nothing, she understood what had happened. Hunt locked himself in the shower with scalding water, letting the extreme heat burn his skin as self-inflicted punishment. Bryce found him sitting on the shower floor, his wings drooping and his gaze empty. Without hesitation, she entered, ignoring the burning heat, and began to wash him. Hunt allowed her to clean him in silence as Bryce whispered words of comfort. When she finished, Bryce led him to bed and, seeing that he didn't want to be alone, stayed by his side, gently stroking his hair until Hunt finally found peace and sleep, clinging to the only person who gave him solace. Chapter 56. Hunt woke up at peace, resting in Bryce's lap. She was sleeping deeply after taking care of him, and he felt a calm he hadn't experienced in centuries. He moved her to her own bed, but couldn't ignore the worried messages from Rune on his phone. Bryce woke up uneasy but was relieved to see Hunt resting in the guest room. As she prepared coffee, her mind wandered between her feelings and the anguish of knowing what he had done. Hunt joined her in the kitchen, and although his words were calm, the tension between them was palpable. Bryce recognized the pain he carried, but Hunt tried to keep his distance to protect her. As the day progressed, the chemistry between them continued to burn, though the concern about the investigation and the looming danger overshadowed their thoughts. Chapter 57. Bryce and Hunt continued their search for answers. Victoria informed them that the Mimir tests had found traces of a substance called synth on Danika's clothes, a hybrid drug of synthetic, technological, and magical origin. The substance was also present on the garments of other victims, including Maximus Tertian. Suspecting that synth could be used to summon demons, Bryce and Hunt decided to investigate the meat market. Meanwhile, Hunt confronted the painful story of his mother's death, revealing to Bryce how the loss and the indifference of the powerful had led him to join Shahar's rebellion. Touched by his vulnerability, Bryce agreed to face a video call with her parents. During the call, Ember and Randall sensed something deeper between them, but Bryce deflected the topic. The night ended with Bryce acknowledging that they were closer than they had ever imagined. Chapter 58. Bryce and Hunt returned to the meat market seeking clues about synth, but the vendors continued to deny any knowledge. During their search, Bryce confronts Hunt's opinions about their relationship and his resistance to opening up. Later, they visit a charm stall where Hunt buys a white opal for Bryce, hoping to bring her a bit of joy. The connection between them intensifies, though Hunt is reminded of his past relationship with Shahar. When Bryce tries to inquire about synth with a feline shifter, she discovers that the entire market had already been warned about their questions. Finally, they receive information from the Viper Queen suggesting they investigate the river and ask the mayor, opening a new lead in the investigation. Chapter 59. Bryce and Hunt meet with Therian, a mayor who reveals shocking information. Danika was seen on an AUX ship near the river before her death, in the presence of a box of synth. This raises doubts in Bryce about Danika's involvement and whether she might have been confiscating the drug. The conversation with Therian leaves Bryce confused and anxious to understand what Danika was doing with that substance. Later, Bryce contacts Fury for answers and discovers that Danika knew about synth, but never mentioned it to protect her. The revelation shakes Bryce, who doesn't understand why her best friend would hide something so important, intensifying her pain and sense of betrayal. Chapter 60. Bryce spends the day lost in thought until she decides to call Rune to discuss theories about synth and the horn. However, the conversation shifts to memories of Danika and how she always protected Bryce. Later, Bryce buys chocolate croissants to celebrate Danika's birthday, a symbolic gesture to honor her memory. However, her pain intensifies when she discovers that someone altered the message on the dessert, writing, "trash." Devastated, Bryce tries to throw the box away, but Hunt, furious, flies straight to confront Amelie Ravenscroft, the one responsible for the cruel joke. Hunt threatens her to leave Bryce alone, reflecting how much he protects her and how much she means to him. Chapter 61. Bryce decides to visit the Med Witch to extract the Crystallo's venom that still lingers in her leg. Hunt accompanies her and reveals how much he had cared for her the night of the attack, further strengthening their bond. During the painful procedure, Bryce endures the suffering while Hunt consoles her and stays by her side. The Med Witch successfully extracts the venom and begins working on creating an antidote for synth. After a moment of shared vulnerability, Bryce and Hunt grow even closer. Although the venom extraction was a success, both feel that they are getting closer to discovering the truth behind synth and Danika's murder, though they still don't know if they're ready to face it. Chapter 62. Jezebel had no objections when Bryce asked for the day off but warned that she had to return to the gallery the next day. Hunt flew her home after the medical consultation, carried her up the stairs, and let her rest beside him on the couch. The peaceful atmosphere was shattered when Micah called Hunt, demanding that they both report to his office immediately. The Archangel's cold voice indicated serious trouble. Bryce, still sore from her injury, could barely move, so Hunt helped her dress and flew her to the Comitium. Tension grew as they crossed the sky, aware that something important was about to happen. Bryce and Hunt knew they had crossed a line with their kiss that morning, and there was no turning back. Upon arrival, the somber atmosphere and the silence in the hallway foreshadowed bad news. Chapter 63. Micah was waiting in his office with Sabine, Amelie, Isaiah, and Victoria. The Archangel accused Hunt of attacking Amelie after her prank on Bryce, and Sabine demanded immediate punishment. Although Micah made it clear that Hunt had acted alone, Sabine pressed for an exemplary punishment. Bryce, terrified, pleaded for Hunt, but Micah delivered his sentence. Living death, the punishment for fallen angels, which involved cutting off their wings. Bryce begged, but Micah didn't relent. Hunt, knowing there was no other option, knelt and allowed Micah to sever his wings. The indescribable pain left him unconscious as Bryce's screams echoed through the office. Hunt's blood covered the floor, and Sabine smiled in satisfaction. Micah, unfazed, ordered a medwitch to prevent Hunt's death, but the damage was already done. Chapter 64. While Hunt was treated by the medwitches, Bryce stayed by his side, holding his head in her lap. Still traumatized, she recalled the sacrifice she had made for Danica after her death. Bryce had bargained with the king of the underworld, offering her eternal place in the Bone Quarter to ensure Danica could rest in peace. Bryce couldn't bear the thought of Danica suffering shame in the afterlife. Although Sabine despised this act and claimed that Danica suffered because of her cowardly death, Bryce knew that her friend had nothing to be ashamed of. The memories of that night haunted her as she stroked Hunt's hair, promising herself that she would find a way to fix everything. Anger grew inside her, determined to seek vengeance against those who had caused her so much pain. Chapter 65. Bryce found a hidden drive in Danica's jacket containing horrifying videos of experiments conducted with synth. Innocent humans were injected with the drug, massacring Vanir before self-destructing. Bryce realized that Danica had discovered these horrors, and that was why she had been killed. When she shared the information with Hunt, he warned her that they needed to proceed carefully to avoid further punishment from Micah. However, betrayal was closer than Bryce had imagined. After a clandestine exchange by the river, Bryce and Therion witnessed the Viper Queen selling synth. But the most heartbreaking surprise came when Bryce clearly saw the face of one of the buyers under the hood. It was Hunt. Hunt's betrayal hit her like a mortal blow, leaving her in the deepest confusion. Chapter 66. Bryce was in shock after discovering that Hunt was involved in a rebellion with Victoria and Justinian to buy synth and overthrow the Archangels. Micah and the Viper Queen had betrayed them, trapping them in an ambush. Bryce felt deeply betrayed upon learning that Hunt had known the truth about Danica for days and hadn't told her. Micah revealed that Danica had stolen the formula for synth and had become addicted, which led her to kill the pack and herself. Hunt tried to explain that he had backed out of the deal after seeing the videos, but Bryce, devastated, threw the white opal at him, cutting all ties between them. Micah ordered Hunt and his accomplices to be arrested, and Bryce left the scene with fury, unable to forgive him. Chapter 67. Back at her apartment, Bryce sank into despair. Rune came to console her as she processed Hunt's lies and the horror of discovering that Danica had killed the pack. Micah crucified Justinian and imprisoned Victoria's soul in a box that he cast into the depths of the sea, while Hunt was locked in the Comitium's cells. Bryce fell into sadness and pain, feeling as if she had lost not only Danica but also Hunt. The betrayal and lies tore her apart, leaving her with an unbearable emptiness. Chapter 68. Hunt endured the torment of watching Justinian die slowly on the cross and knowing that Victoria was condemned to madness in the Milanoe pit. Micah kept Hunt alive for something worse, and Hunt accepted his fate, tormented by the tears and pain he had caused Bryce. Isaiah visited him to say goodbye, reminding him how much he had hurt Bryce. As Hunt suffered through the agonizing regrowth of his severed wings, Sandriel appeared in his cell to mock his misery. The Archangel showed him photos of him and Bryce, reminding him of the life he could have had, only to announce that she now owned him and would take him back to Pangera. Chapter 69. Bryce tried to move on with her life, but her father, the Autumn King, visited to warn her about the danger of the Lost Horn and to remind her that, despite her denial, she had more of him in her than she wanted to admit. Rune also tried to reconnect with her, inviting her to a softball game to bond again. But it was Fury who shook Bryce when she revealed that Micah had handed Hunt over to Sandriel, who would take him to Pangera after the summit. Although Bryce pretended to be indifferent, her determination ignited. She knew she couldn't lose Hunt, no matter what he had done. Chapter 70. Fury tried to warn Bryce not to do anything reckless after revealing Hunt's fate, but Bryce already had a plan in mind. The betrayal and lies had shattered her, but she wouldn't allow Hunt to suffer under Sandriel's yoke. Although Hunt had hurt her, she couldn't leave him to his fate. Bryce decided she would do whatever it took to save him, no matter the cost. As she looked at the couch where Hunt used to sit, her resolve strengthened. She wouldn't lose another loved one. Bryce wouldn't do something stupid, but she would do something smart. Chapter 71. Hunt spent the night in the cell knowing that Sandriel would take him to her castle in Pangera, where he had lived for over 50 years. Sandriel left photos of Bryce to remind him who would suffer if he disobeyed. At dawn, his wings began to regenerate. Later, Pollux Antonius, the cruel and sadistic commander of the Triarii, came to escort him to the Comitium lobby, where Sandriel was waiting. Justinian still hung on the cross, a reminder of the fate of those who defied authority. As they were about to take Hunt away, Bryce burst in desperately and offered to buy Hunt for 97 million marks and an Archesian amulet. Sandriel destroyed the amulet, but Bryce knelt and offered her life in exchange for Hunt. Rune arrived to stop her, claiming Bryce as a member of the royal Fae house. With the offer rejected, Hunt was taken away, while Bryce, devastated, vowed to find a way to save him. Chapter 72. Rune watched as Hunt was taken away while Bryce, full of rage, yelled that she would never forgive him. Rune, defending his decision, reminded her of what Sandriel did to her slaves. Bryce, shattered, spat at his feet before leaving. Rune faced the disappointment of Declan and Flynn, who were angry about him keeping the truth about Bryce from them. Flynn pointed out that Bryce was now officially the princess of the royal Fae house. Rune explained that his father would never acknowledge Bryce and that he kept quiet to protect her. He knew that, according to the prophecy, if Rune's bloodline ended, Bryce would be the last heir and had to disappear. Rune accepted being hated by Bryce if it meant keeping her safe. After the tension, Rune decided he needed to talk to her, though he wasn't sure how to handle what was coming. Chapter 73. Devastated, Bryce went to the Black Dock to speak to Danica. Kneeling by the river, she confessed her failure. As she cried, she was attacked by a Crystallos demon that dragged her into the water. Claws and teeth tore at her as she struggled to reach the surface. Just as she was drowning, Declan rescued her and carried her to the dock. Rune and Flynn arrived, armed and ready to face the demon, but it was already dead. Declan, using his healing gifts, closed Bryce's wounds. Rune, furious, demanded to know why she was alone there, and Bryce responded that she needed to breathe. Tension escalated when Flynn remarked that Bryce, now recognized as a princess, was becoming a burden. Rune insisted that Bryce stay with him for protection, but she, filled with anger, rejected his help and deleted his contact from her phone, declaring that, to her, Rune was dead. Chapter 74. Hunt was taken to the conference center for the summit, where he was displayed as Sandriel's trophy. The venue, modern and filled with leaders from all the houses, reflected the power of the Republic. Hunt saw Sandriel's Triarii, including Pollux, alongside Isaiah and Naomi, who gave him a silent farewell. Leaders began to arrive: Jezebel, Queen Hypaxia, Therion, Sabine, and finally, the Autumn King with Rune. The Asturian Guard, composed of angels with white wings, arrived to remind everyone that the Asturi were watching. Micah and Sandriel paraded with arrogance. Tension rose when the image of the 6 Asturi appeared on the screen. Their supernatural power froze everyone. Hunt saw that Rune, Therion, Declan, and Hypaxia were the only ones who dared to look up. When the Asturi approved the summit, the atmosphere was filled with fear. Chapter 75. The summit dragged on with endless discussions about trade and war. Sandriel imposed her will, insisting on more troops and sacrifices for the war. Tharion expressed concern about the ecological damage that would be caused by the construction of a canal, and Queen Hypaxia supported him, reminding everyone of past disasters. Sandriel dismissed their concerns, but Hypaxia stood her ground, earning Tharion's respect. Rune, bored and frustrated, watched closely. Meanwhile, Hunt, chained and guarded by Pollux, tried to endure his last days of relative peace before returning to Sandriel's hell. He observed everything carefully, hoping that the delegations resisting would hold out until the end of the summit before the Asteri imposed their decisions. Although everyone knew that, in the end, nothing would change, the war would continue to claim lives, and Hunt knew his fate was sealed. Chapter 76. Bryce spent 3 days in the Griffin Antiquities Library, searching for a legal solution to free Hunt. Desperate, she took another Archesian amulet from Jezebel's safe. Micah unexpectedly appeared at the gallery, terrifying Syrinx and Lahaba. Ignoring Bryce's warnings, he began inspecting the forbidden books that Jezebel secretly kept. Micah revealed that he was looking for Bryce, confirming her worst fears. At the summit, Hunt and Rune watched the security footage of the gallery in horror. Bryce tried to stay calm but sent a distress message to Jezebel. The tension grew when Micah mentioned the books from the Great Library of Parthos, a treasure of human knowledge from before the arrival of the Asteri. Bryce tried to distract him, but Micah confronted her, demanding the Horn of Luna. The situation turned deadly when Micah revealed that he knew the truth. Bryce carried the horn tattooed on her back. Chapter 77. Micah confessed that Danica had stolen the horn and mixed it with witch ink to tattoo it onto Bryce's back, making her its bearer. Bryce, horrified, listened as Micah revealed that he had manipulated Danica into stealing the horn and distributing synth, which led to the death of the pack of devils. Micah planned to use synth to repair the horn and open portals to other worlds, hoping to become a new Asteri. During his confession, Bryce stalled for time, trying to keep Micah away from the tank where Syrinx was hiding. The situation became critical when Micah injected synth into Bryce, triggering the horn's power. In a desperate act, Bryce reached for a power book that created a golden barrier to protect herself, but Micah, relentless, threatened to drown Syrinx. Bryce watched helplessly as Micah threw Syrinx into the Nox tank, unleashing her despair. Chapter 78. Micah threw Syrinx into the tank and overpowered Bryce, trying to force her to activate the horn. Bryce, feeling the weight of the synth in her body, fought to save Syrinx. As Micah dominated her, Bryce found a power book and managed to unleash a blast that trapped the Archangel in the bathroom. Using those precious minutes, she ran to the tank to save Syrinx. From the summit, Hunt, Rune, and the others watched the scene in horror. Rune realized that Bryce was facing her ordeal, the same one destined for a true hero. Bryce hyperventilated to prepare herself before diving into the Nox tank, without magic or protection, risking her life to save her friend. As the platform descended, Bryce swam toward the darkness, facing the unknown terror, while everyone watched, knowing that Bryce and Syrinx's lives hung by a thread. Chapter 79. Bryce plunged into the icy water of the tank to save Syrinx, ignoring the pain in her recently healed leg. She swam to the feeding platform and began to ascend with the Chimera in her arms, but the Nox emerged from the shadows and dragged her back underwater. As she struggled, the monster tore the knife from her grasp, and Bryce, desperate, used her wits to attack it where it hurt the most. She managed to free herself and swam toward the surface, but the Nox was close behind. Upon reaching the platform, Bryce made one last effort to climb before the Nox could reach her. She barely managed to pull herself up and save Syrinx, who remained motionless. Bryce performed chest compressions until the Chimera vomited water and began breathing again. Gravely injured and with Micah about to break free, Bryce grabbed Syrinx and started climbing the stairs, determined to escape. Chapter 80. As Bryce climbed the stairs carrying Syrinx, she realized that Lahaba was not following her. The sprite decided to stay behind to buy time and prevent Micah from reaching them. Bryce, desperate, revealed that she had bought Lahaba's freedom to set her free, but Lahaba, with sadness, insisted on staying to protect her. Bryce, crying, told her she loved her before continuing her way. Lahaba, shining like a star, recited her lineage as Ranthia Dral, Queen of Embers, while summoning all her power. With unimaginable strength, she struck the tank's glass until it shattered, releasing a wave of water that swept through the library. The Nock and Micah were dragged away, but Lahaba sacrificed herself in the process. Bryce, devastated, managed to reach the exhibition hall, knowing that her friend had given her life to save her. Chapter 81. After Lahaba's sacrifice, Bryce ran to Jezebel's office and assembled the Godslayer rifle with a precision that echoed Randall's teachings. She took the golden bullet engraved with Memento Mori and, fueled by rage and pain, positioned herself by the broken window. Micah stormed in from the library, blinded by his thirst for power, unaware of Bryce. She used the precious seconds Lahaba had given her and shot him directly in the head. The bullet pierced his skull, but Bryce didn't stop. She jumped from the office, wielding Danika's sword, and sliced Micah in half, ensuring he had no chance to heal. Covered in blood, Bryce poured gasoline over the Archangel's corpse and burned it, erasing any trace of his existence. Her act of vengeance was witnessed by everyone at the summit, sealing her fate. Chapter 82. As the city trembled from Micah's death, Bryce discovered that the horn had been activated and that portals to hell had opened at all the city's gates. Demons poured through them, sowing chaos. Bryce left Syrinx safe in her apartment, grabbed weapons and Danika's sword, and headed to the rooftop to assess the disaster. Shelters began to close, and Bryce, worried about Juniper, called to ensure she was safe. Though her friend was inside a shelter, humans outside were in danger. Bryce decided to go out into the streets, ready to fight. With fierce determination, she ran toward the city center, facing the demons and protecting the innocent. Her goal was clear: defend the vulnerable and close the portals before it was too late. Chapter 83. Bryce fought relentlessly through the streets of Crescent City, battling the demons emerging from hell. Covered in blood and exhausted, she fired without missing and used Danika's sword to carve a path through the creatures. Shelters were closing, leaving many humans defenseless in the streets. Bryce, guided by her instinct and heart, decided to head toward the meadows, the city's most vulnerable area, filled with humans without magic. As she ran, she remembered every moment of training with Randall, every lesson in endurance and strategy. Her determination burned brighter than ever. She knew she was alone in this battle, but she also knew she couldn't fail. The meadows were her destination, and though death loomed, Bryce was willing to sacrifice herself to protect the innocent still trapped in the hell unleashed by Micah. Chapter 84. Bryce continued fighting in Asphodel Meadows, exhausted and with few bullets left, but determined to protect the human children still running toward the shelters. Sabine insisted there was no backup for the meadows, but Bryce desperately shouted that there were babies and defenseless families. Ethan Holstrom, disobeying Sabine's direct orders, announced that he was on his way with his pack. The wolves, along with jackals, coyotes, and other canines, ran toward the meadows, ready to protect the most vulnerable. Bryce, fighting with everything she had left, kept shooting and cutting down the demons attacking her, but her strength was waning. Just as she was about to be devoured by a demon, one of the Viper Queen's fae bodyguards appeared and saved her, followed by Ethan's pack arriving to fight by her side. Bryce, with her sword ready, prepared to continue the battle. Chapter 85. Bryce and Ethan fought side by side, defending the entrance to the shelter while humans rushed to safety. The demons fell, but more kept coming as Bryce fired her last bullets and then wielded Danika's sword to cut down the beasts. When Ethan was wounded and fell, Bryce held him and pushed him toward the shelter as the door began to close. However, realizing there wasn't enough time for both of them, Bryce sacrificed her own chance to escape and shoved Ethan inside just before the door sealed shut. Hit by the reality that she was alone outside, Bryce felt desperation but didn't let fear consume her. She hid in a niche, waiting for a brief respite before facing what was to come. She knew her only option was to reach the old square and do the impossible to close the gates. Chapter 86. Bryce, covered in blood and exhausted, left the closed shelter behind and ran toward the old square. The dark sky heralded the arrival of even worse creatures from hell. Bryce knew she was alone, but she couldn't stop. Every demon she encountered fell beneath her sword, but the horde showed no signs of stopping. She made her way to the Heart Gate, where the flow of demons seemed to pause, as if waiting for darkness to strike again. Bryce, out of options and bearing the weight of destiny on her shoulders, decided to use the power she had hidden her entire life. She unleashed the starlight within her, a gift she had kept secret out of fear of what it would mean for her family and the world. With that pure, ancient light in her hands, Bryce approached the gate, determined to close it and save the city. Chapter 87. Bryce stood before the Heart Gate, letting the astral light of her starborn lineage flow from her heart. For the first time, she invoked the full extent of her power, a light so pure and blinding that it illuminated the entire city. The horn tattooed on her back vibrated with her energy, channeling that force into the gate. Light burst from the quartz arch, blinding the remaining demons and driving them away. Bryce, exhausted by the effort, fell to her knees, but she had succeeded in closing the portal to hell. However, the other gates across the city remained open. At the summit, everyone witnessed Bryce's power through the broadcasts. The Autumn King, furious, called Ember to confront her about hiding the truth about Bryce's lineage. Ember, proud, reminded him that Bryce had protected that secret to avoid taking Rune's title. Chapter 88. After watching Bryce close the Heart Gate, the conference room fell silent. The truth about her starborn lineage had been revealed, and the Astery, informed by Sandriel, would soon act to eliminate the threat Bryce posed. Hunt, devastated and filled with rage, felt Hypaxia's power flow through him as the Witch Queen dissolved the halo keeping him prisoner. Hypaxia's magic broke the spell and restored Hunt's celestial power. Sandriel, satisfied that she had alerted the Astery, was unaware that Hunt was no longer bound. Hunt's heart burned for Bryce, knowing that the Astery would try to kill her to prevent her from closing the remaining gates. With his power restored and his determination ablaze, Hunt stood up, ready to fight anyone necessary to protect Bryce, even if it meant defying the Astery. Chapter 89. Rune distracted Sandriel while Hypaxia freed Hunt from the halo's control. When the halo disintegrated, the true Umbra Mortis emerged, unleashing deadly lightning. Sandriel, realizing too late that she had endangered Bryce by alerting the Astery, had no chance to defend herself. Hunt's lightning tore through the conference room as his pent-up fury exploded. When the dust settled, Hunt stood holding Sandriel's severed, still smoldering head. All the angels present knelt before him, including Isaiah, acknowledging his power. Rune saw the terror reflected in the Autumn King's face, fearful that Hunt would kill him for how he had treated Bryce. But Hunt had only one priority: Bryce. He shouted for Fury to bring the helicopter to head to Lunathion. He knew that every second counted and that Bryce's life was hanging by a thread if they didn't arrive in time. Chapter 90. With his power restored, Hunt ordered the angels to prepare for battle. Fury confirmed that the helicopter was on the rooftop, and without wasting time, Hunt headed there. Rune, Therian, Amelie, and Flynn joined the mission without hesitation. Declan, meanwhile, stayed behind to be their eyes on the battlefield. Fury's helicopter was no ordinary vehicle. It was armed and ready for war. As they flew toward Lunathion, Hunt focused on his objective. As they approached, the light from the old square gate still glowed faintly, a sign that Bryce was still alive. Fury mentioned that Hypaxia had informed them that Bryce was exhausted and wouldn't be able to close another gate without help. But before they could arrive, Declan warned that the Asterian Guard was on its way, armed with sulfur missiles ready to destroy the city. The danger intensified, and Hunt knew time was running out to save Bryce. Chapter 91. As the Asterian Guard's tanks prepared the sulfur missiles, Hunt ordered Fury to take the helicopter as high as possible. He knew what he had to do. With his heart burning for Bryce, he jumped from the helicopter to intercept the missile heading toward the old square. His lightning propelled him at full speed, and at the last moment, He threw himself over Bryce to protect her from the impact. The missile exploded, and the city trembled under its destruction. When Bryce regained consciousness, she found Hunt gravely injured, his body shattered, wings torn off, and blood soaking the ground. He had saved her once again, sacrificing himself to protect her. Bryce, desperate, tried to call for help, but no one responded. Hunt was dying, and the sulfur-inflicted wounds prevented his body from healing. Bryce, in tears, held his face, knowing Hunt's time was running out. Chapter 92. Bryce, on the brink of collapse, saw that the gate was still standing and remembered her ancestral connection to it. Hoping to save Hunt and close the gates, she approached the bronze disc and made a final plea. She begged for someone to respond from another gate so she could make the drop and generate the first light needed to close the portals to hell. But no one answered. Alone and with Hunt dying, Bryce cried out in helplessness. Just as hope was fading, a familiar voice echoed in her mind. Danica. Bryce screamed her name, and with the strength of the bond that had never broken, she felt her friend's presence. The spark that remained of Danica responded from the bone quarter. Bryce, through laughter and tears, struck the gate's disc and plunged into the drop, anchored by Danica's soul, ready to risk everything to save Hunt and the city. Chapter 93. Bryce made the drop alone, an impossible act that defied all the rules. As she fell, Danica accompanied her, her spark giving Bryce strength. The city's gates began to glow, and Bryce's first light flowed through them, closing the portals to hell and healing everything it touched. The city's power, accumulated over centuries, fueled Bryce's drop, taking her to levels never seen before. When she touched the bottom of the power, Bryce felt Danica fading, her spark exhausted to give Bryce that final push. Bryce, with tears in her eyes, understood that her friend would not return. As the city was restored, Bryce began her ascent, driven by the love and strength of everyone she had lost. But her way back was uncertain. In the old square, Hunt, now healed by Bryce's light, fought to bring her back to life. With love and desperation, he performed compressions to revive her heart, pleading for her return. And when all seemed lost, Bryce, guided by Danica's strength and Hunt's love, returned to life. Chapter 94. Bryce ascended, feeling part of everything. Sea, sky, rock, and stars. Danica had disappeared, giving the last of her soul to push Bryce forward. But Bryce didn't fall into grief. She roared with defiance, climbing higher until she felt the veil between life and death. On the other side, Hunt fought to keep her heart beating, calling out to her without rest. Bryce heard him, smiled, and leapt toward him. Meanwhile, Hunt, with his heart overflowing with love, continued compressions and sent lightning through her body, begging her to come back. When his power recognized Bryce's return, her body arched, and finally, her soul returned. Bryce breathed, felt life return, and most importantly, felt Hunt's arms around her. With the first light still shining around her and Hunt's halo gone, they found each other, their souls connected. Together, they took the first step toward their new destiny. Chapter 95. Bryce returned to life in the old square, wrapped in Hunt's wings. When she opened her eyes, she saw that he was free from the halo and his skin was clean. They touched, smiled, and joked with the same warmth as always. But their private moment was interrupted when the people of Crescent City emerged from their shelters and saw them, marveling at their return. Bryce and Hunt, hand in hand, greeted the world. Later, when they returned to their apartment, Syrinx was waiting for them, crying with worry. Bryce hugged him tightly, but the pain of the losses they had endured hit her. They had saved the city, but they couldn't bring back the dead. Grief made her sob, and Hunt, always by her side, held her as they both processed what they had lived through. In the intimacy of their home, they found solace in each other, aware that the battle was far from over. Chapter 96. Bryce and Hunt were ready to give themselves to each other, but a call from her mother interrupted the moment. While Bryce talked, Hunt stepped away and called Isaiah, who confirmed that the Comitium was in chaos after Micah and Sandriel's deaths. However, Bryce's world stopped when she received a call from Rigilus, the most powerful Astery. Rigilus congratulated her on her feat and, as a token of gratitude, freed Hunt from his slavery. But freedom had a price. The Astery made it clear that Bryce and Hunt had to keep their power a secret, never use the horn, and live discreetly. The implied threat was clear, and Bryce understood that any mistake could cost them their lives. Although Hunt was free, both knew that the Astery were watching them closely. Bryce ended the call, feeling that the true battle was only beginning. Chapter 97. Bryce and Hunt went to the Comitium, where they met Rune, Fury, and Flynn. Rune, full of emotion and relief, hugged her tightly, trembling with the anguish he had felt when he believed her dead. Bryce confessed that she had forgiven him, and Rune promised that he would always be her brother before any title or prophecy. Their bond was strengthened, though both knew they would eventually have to face the Autumn King. After the emotional reunion, Bryce returned home, exhausted but at peace. The next day, she walked to the Istros, reflecting on everything she had lived through. She sent one last message to Connor, telling him she was home and let go of the pain. Then, in a glimpse through the mist of the Bone Quarter, she saw the pack of devils, with Danica at the center, waving at her one last time. Tears rolled down her face, but her heart found peace. When she returned, Hunt was waiting for her with breakfast, and Bryce finally knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. Epilogue. In the Oracle's park, a white cat with eyes like blue opals calmly licked its paw. Jezebel Roga, observing him, reminded him that he wasn't a real cat. Idas, the prince of the depths, lifted his head and joked about enjoying it. The conversation shifted when Jezebel asked why Idas had never told her about Bryce. He responded that he didn't trust anyone, not even her. Idas confessed that he believed Thea's light had disappeared forever under Prince Peleus's sword, but now it shone in Bryce Quinlan. Jezebel, intrigued, asked if he could distinguish between Bryce's light and runes, and Idas affirmed that Thea's light still sang in her blood. When he mentioned Hunt Athalar, Idas suggested that his father would be proud. Before leaving, he warned that things were about to get very interesting. That was House of Earth and Blood, a story of pain, loyalty, and hope that shines even in the darkest times. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Lunathion. If you like this summary, subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and share it with your fellow fantasy readers. Now tell me in the comments, what was the most emotional moment for you in Bryce and Hunt's story?